Mark Cronin here from John's Crazy Socks. And you are here because you have some questions about the future and your child. What does the future hold? What will your child do when schooling ends? What will they do with their days? How will your child support himself or herself? There are no easy answers here, and there are many challenges. And what I would like to do is share some of the experiences that we've had in our family with our son John. So John is our youngest son, the youngest of three. He's now 28. But when he was finishing up school, his last year was 2016, 2017. We live in New York. He was going to turn 21. That was going to be the answer. He had to be out of school. He and we looked at further education, at social service programs, at looking for a job. Ultimately, John, who's a natural entrepreneur, opted to start his own business. He came to me with an idea, actually lots of ideas. One turned out to be a good idea, and said, Dad, let's go into business together. And we've created John's Crazy Socks. We've now finished 7.5 years of business. We've grown it into the world's largest sock store. We've created jobs for 34 people. 24 of them are held by people with different abilities. We've raised over $750,000 for our charity partners. And as John likes to say, we're just getting started. So I want to share some of our experiences as both a parent and as an employer of what we see are options for people with different abilities. So let's first look at what I call the employment spectrum. Your child is done with school. What are their options? Well, it starts at volunteer work, a place where he or she can go, contribute, be active, do some work, but it's going to be on a volunteer basis. They're not going to get paid. And then that might be at a local hospital, or it could be at an art museum or a park. It could be a business that lets them volunteer. You have to decide if that's a viable option for your child, for your family member. Then there's internships. These have evolved in recent years because the IRS has become relatively strict. If you are an intern, you are supposed to be paid if you contribute anything of economic value to the business. The only exceptions come if you're receiving school credit. That said, many counties and states have programs where they will underwrite the salary of somebody who's starting off if they have a disability. So you may want to look into those programs, but this can be a great way for your family member to just gain some hands-on work experience. Next up is part-time employment. You're looking for just a few hours here, a few hours there. And then full-time employment. It may take piecing together multiple part-time jobs to reach full-time employment. There's a balance here between financial needs, accessibility to employment, and the ability of your family member to do that work. They may not be able to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But this is the range of employment options. I want to focus more on the entrepreneurial spectrum because entrepreneurship is an option for everybody. And particularly, if you cannot find work, this may be the way to go. This is true of the general population. I was on the phone this morning with someone who lost their job and in response is starting their own business. So let's look at that spectrum. It starts with a hobby. A hobby is something a person likes to do. They're able to craft something or do some work. It gives them pleasure. It gives them meaning. But there's no financial reward. They're not getting paid for the work they do. There may be a little money, but basically they have to pay for all their supplies. Now a hobby may be enough. Next step up would be crafts work. This is someone has the ability to make things. It might be jewelry, it might be artwork. We know of Purely Patrick. He's able to pour cookie mix into a container and make items that you can then sell and make cookies. There's lots of different options there. And then what do? Well, you could sell that on Etsy or create your own website. You might go to farmers markets. You might go to craft shows and sell your goods. And basically, what you're thinking about here is a way to get your costs covered and maybe some extra money. It's not generally going to be sufficient income to live off of. It may not be full-time work. It may be a lot of hours. It can be very meaningful and productive. A variation on craft work is freelance work. And freelance work is, instead of making a craft, it's a skill you're able to sell. Maybe you're an illustrator. Maybe you can do coding. Maybe you can do data entry. And you sell that service to different businesses or individuals. So you're not an employee. You're separate, and you have to set up your own financial accounts, but you get paid to provide a service. Next up is solo entrepreneurship. So that's taking that craft work or that freelance work and really turning it into a business. You may do it yourself, or maybe two other people. You may work with virtual assistants and work with contractors, but basically you're on your own. There are millions of people doing this in America today. And you're earning money, and you can live off of this. You can grow that business so you can live off of it. And the final end is, you create a real business with other jobs and other people. That's what we've done with John's Crazy Socks. That's what they've done with Sunshine Car Wash down in Florida, or Coletti's Cookies up in Boston. Those are thriving businesses that employ people. So this is the entrepreneurial spectrum. And as you think about your family members' options, do they want employment? Is that preferable? Would they rather do something on their own? And where do you fit in this spectrum? What are you trying to get done? And here's what I call the entrepreneurial sweet spot. It's something you love, something you know a lot about. And then you've got to find customers that are willing to pay for it. And finally, it's something you can replicate. Colette DeVito loves baking her cookies. And she's able to find customers that are willing to pay for those cookies. And she's able to do it day after day to produce those cookies. A real key here is you got to get people that are willing to pay for it. You're going to hear, oh, that's wonderful, that's beautiful. But is somebody willing to reach into their pocket and pay money? Then you can have a business. So that sweet spot is where you know about something, you're willing to pour yourself into it, where customers are willing to pay money, and you can replicate and do this over and over. So here's a quick checklist if you want to start a business. What's your goal? Are you looking just to do a little craft work? What do you want, a full-fledged business? What's your business idea? What are you going to do that people are going to pay money for? You always got to think about that. You got to be able to get customers. If your business idea succeeds, will it meet your goal? If you're looking for full-time employment, but what you're doing is not going to produce much money, that's not going to meet your goal. Who's on your team? Rarely can somebody do something alone. And if a family member wants to start something, they're going to need support of their family. So you have to recognize, what are the skills you have? What's the time available? What funds do you have to start? And can you test the idea? John and I tested it. We went the lean startup route. Get something up and running and see what customers tell you. Okay. That's a quick introduction and overview. I'm sorry I can't be with you to answer questions. You can find me at John's Crazy Socks. Send at service@johnscrazysocks.com. You can send emails. I'll be glad to talk to people. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Mark X Cronin on LinkedIn. All right. Thanks, folks.